We are going to be reading a text called Life in an Algonquin Village. And we've been learning about different tribes and different languages. And last week we read about the Iroquois and the Iroquoian language. And so this week we're going to learn about life in an Algonquin village. And then we're going to compare the two, the village that we've already read about and the village that we're going to read about this week. And this text also will help some of you with your slides in your social studies project. I want to start by showing you some words that you're going to see here. There we go. Okay, I want us to take a look at some words that are going to be in the text. I'm sorry, it's being a little bit slow. Okay, and I want you to put the new words in the vocabulary section of your social studies notebook. So it's in the back of your notebook. We put a little sticky note there to remind us that this is our vocabulary for social studies, because we have vocabulary sections in every notebook so that we can put our domain-specific vocabulary there. Okay, so our first word in this text is preserved. And I'm going to show you where it is in the text and then give you a definition, a short little definition that you can write down. So they preserved much of this food. It's on page 1. And preserved means to keep fresh. So like sometimes now we can our food to keep it fresh, but you're going to read to find out about ways that they preserved their food to keep it fresh. Okay, so put preserved in your notebook and to keep fresh. You might want to draw a picture of a jar of food to help remind you. Okay, the next word is permanent. It was stored in their permanent villages for use in winter when nothing grew. So permanent means lasting for a long time or indefinitely. Like we said that Native Americans in our area lived in longhouses, and they were permanent. It was a house they were going to stay in. So they stored their food in their permanent villages. Okay, your next word is fertile. That made it more fertile or good for growing crops. Okay, that's on page 2. Now, I highlighted the word fertile for you, and then often the definition for a new word will come right after it or right before it. And so here's a comma, and then look, the definition for fertile, good for growing crops. It's right there. You don't have to look it up in the dictionary. It's right there. So here's a picture of fertile soil, which is good for growing crops. Okay, then we have a weir, and it said in the text they built weirs or wooden traps. Look at that again. The definition is right there after the comma. You don't have to look it up. It's right there. So here is a picture of a weir, and they're still used today. They're just not wooden traps. Okay, so let's go to our text. Now, one of the things I want us to focus on is finding the main idea. And we've been doing that in Soft Rain. We've been doing it by sketching what was most important and then coming up with a chapter title. So we can find the main idea several ways. We can find it by sketching and writing down or coming up with our own title for different sections. We can go through the text and just put exclamation marks like where we see some like really cool important information, and that will help us find the main idea. And we've been doing that for 2 weeks since school started. We've been looking for things that surprise us, and usually that is going to be the main idea. So life in an Algonquin village I'm going to begin reading this with you today. Um, I'm not going to read it all, but I'm going to begin reading it with you. And I'm going to go ahead today and start putting my exclamation marks, but you don't have to. You can wait and do that tomorrow as long as you have put your vocabulary in your notebook today. And I'm going to take my little pen, I hope I am over here, and I'm going to start looking for things that surprise me while we read. Life in Algonquin villages followed the 4 seasons. In spring, after planting their crops, eastern tribes left their villages. They camped along the coast or by rivers to gather food. Okay, well, that surprises me that after they planted their crops, they left because we thought they were permanent. But it does say they're camping. So maybe they're not really moving. We'll read to find out. Men fished, catching different types of fish each month. They also went into the forest to collect berries and nuts. Much of the food they gathered was preserved. Oh, there's our word. It was stored in their permanent villages. There's another word. For use during the cold winters when nothing grew. In the fall, they returned to their villages to harvest crops, collect wild fruits, and hunt game. Okay, so now I know they didn't really move. They just went on a hunting expedition and then they came home. So I do know that they preserved the food and they stored it in their permanent village. So that it was permanent. I'm going to put an exclamation mark here. So not really moving. They have a permanent place to live. Southern Algonquins also collected seasonal food from the ocean, rivers, and forests, but they relied more on farming. They cleared the land with the slash and burn method. The men used axes to cut around the trunks of trees. When the trees died, they were burned. Oh, we kind of know about that because that's happening in soft rain. Their ashes were spread on the soil to make it more fertile or good for growing. Ah, we found that and its definition already. The land would produce good crops for a few years. When it became less fertile, the entire village would move. Okay, now that surprises me because they build houses. So I gotta put an exclamation mark here. So when the land no longer will produce, then they move. Okay, and remember this text is in your folder that you took home, and it's not in color like this one. That's why I wanted to use this one so you could see it in color. Oh, look at this. They're hunting. And look how he's going to catch some food. In the spring, some men went out to sea in boats to hunt whales, walruses, and seals. Okay, now I have to put an exclamation mark there. That seems dangerous. Other men hunted birds and gathered their eggs. Women and children collected shellfish from tidal pools they found along the coast. How cool. You know, you told me earlier that one of the things you liked about them was that they really worked together. They were unified people. There again, that shows you how well they worked together. Algonquin men usually wore deerskin breechcloths and leggings. We saw breechcloths in the Iroquois. In warm weather, they went shirtless. In cold weather, they wore shirts, often made from the fur of animals they hunted. The women wore deerskin dresses or skirts. Clothing was decorated with beads, porcupine quills, and shells. Deerskin moccasins made for soft and comfortable footwear. Okay, now I'm going to mark a couple of things. I think it's pretty crazy that they have porcupine quills on their clothes. That seems like it would not be comfortable. But This deerskin moccasins, I want an exclamation mark there. And I wonder if that's why Soft Rain calls the soldier Big Boots, because they don't wear boots. So I guess that would have been surprising to her. Okay. Algonquins had many methods of fishing. They used pronged spears to stab fish from canoes or through the ice on ponds in wintertime. They used hooks and lines. They built weirs or wooden traps in a river and then stabbed the fish trapped in their weir with spears. In some places, they fished by night. They lit fires on clay house and canoes to attract fish. An early European visitor to North Carolina drew this picture to show several different types of fishing. In reality, not all fishing methods would be used in the same location. So the person drew the picture as if they were using all of these things at once, but most likely they didn't use them all at the same time. But they did have many ways of fishing. That's pretty cool. Okay, then we know that marriage was very crucial. And you guys have said they work together so well. Well, that's exactly why it's crucial, because of the division of labor between men and women. In the Powhatan Confederacy, men took the first step in a courtship. A woman could say no, but if she said yes, her parents had to approve. Well, that's different, isn't it? I'm going to mark that. So marriage was very crucial, and parents had to approve. They would receive a gift from the man to compensate for the loss of their daughter's work. Compensate. I've heard compensation before. That means that you are being paid for something you're doing. So they are going to compensate or pay for the loss of their daughter's work. Among other groups, the women of both families arranged the marriage. The women arranged the marriage. Interesting. Usually I thought men arranged marriages when that happened. Okay, so I'm going to stop here, and you know that your job is just to go through and mark with exclamation marks things that you think are important or surprising information, something you did not know before. So continue reading. I do want to show you part of a short video. This video is made by the Museum of Natural History in Raleigh. Most of you have been there, so I thought it might be cool for you to see just a very short section of this video.